This is my final thoughts and final prediction video ahead of the WBO World Heavyweight title fight that takes place this weekend between Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz. Now, this is an intriguing fight. This is a fight where people seem to be picking on either side. Let me talk about my thoughts on the lead up to this fight about these two particular prospects. Joseph Parker, he's someone I've been high on for a long time. Long-term viewers and subscribers will know that I've been covering Joseph on this channel for an extended period. I like a lot of what I see in Joseph Parker. I think he's got good boxing capability, great hand speed, above average power, and I think he's a very exciting prospect who's actually been tested at a fairly high level. Through his fight against Carlos Takam, I believe he proved that he is a definite top 10 heavyweight fighter. I had Takam at the bottom end of my top 10 and Parker definitely went out and beat him. Parker's got other decent form on his resume as well. Andy Ruiz, initially a guy who was viewed as an exciting prospect, quick hands, supposedly big power, an above average knockout ratio. With Andy Ruiz, he's been a fighter who, being frank, I've struggled to get as excited about him as I have about Joseph Parker. Ruiz, for me, has always struck me as an individual with very questionable discipline outside of the ring. He's blown up before fights massively before we've seen him enter the ring in quite appalling physical condition. And whilst I'm not one of these fans who believe you need to be a body beautiful heavyweight with a six-pack to win a world champion, you know, muscles don't win belts. At the same time, this is an extremely athletic sport and we are talking the upper echelons of this sport, and I do believe someone who lives the lifestyle is more likely to be successful than someone who turns up in the kind of shape Andy Ruiz is. I've also had further concerns about Andy Ruiz other than just his physical conditioning. Defensively, I think he's been open in the past. I still remember the Tor Hamer fight where he was literally hit at will by Tor Hamer in the early rounds of that fight before Ruiz turned the tables and won by stoppage. Stamina is a very big concern for Ruiz. We've seen him fade in fights before. He was notably pretty terrible against Serhij Lajkovic. Now, I do understand he had an injury that day, but for me, after the first round or two, he grew tired because of his physical conditioning and was pretty weak from that point onwards in the fight. So, Ruiz, Parker, young guys, undefeated guys, fast hands, combination punchers, aggressive guys. There's a lot of similarities between the two, and both of them have their fragilities. For me, Ruiz is a guy who doesn't live the life. Maybe he's not in the best physical condition. Maybe he's a guy who's defensively open. As for Joseph Parker, he's someone who's shown limited head movement in the past. He's someone who doesn't keep his hands up. He's someone who, for me, doesn't particularly like being put on his back foot or having the fight fought at close range on his chest. Parker, however, for me, is potentially the guy with the higher upside. If Parker's allowed to dictate the pace of this fight from range, he's a very good fighter. For me, Joseph Parker is at his most deadly when he can box fights from long distance, when he can get that jab working, and when he can throw big punches off the back of his jab. If Ruiz gives Parker the distance and the time, Parker can win this fight for me from long range. Keys to victory for Joseph Parker: number one, maintaining that distance. Number two, getting that jab up and running from the early stages of this fight. Parker's got a world-class jab. The problem is he doesn't use it enough or well enough. When he throws the jab, it's effective. What we need to see is him changing levels with it. Jab to the body, jab to the head, or vice versa. Doubling up, trebling up that jab, making it a battering ram. Use that to keep the smaller man, Andy Ruiz, at range. You know, Ruiz is not only the smaller guy, he's the less athletic guy. If he has to eat that jab for 2 or 3 rounds, it's going to slow him down, especially with all the extra weight he carries. If Parker can start doubling up that jab, going body, head, body, for me, the writing is on the wall for Andy Ruiz. I think it's that simple. If Parker can keep him at range, make the fight long, and start to tire and bust up Andy Ruiz whilst working that body, for me, the fight becomes a 90-10 fight in Joseph Parker's favour. So I think that distance and that range is so key. There's potential that Ruiz is the most complete offensive fighter Parker's been in with. Parker's fought some good guys, the likes of Dimitrenko, the likes of Takam. Neither of those guys are offensively explosive in the way Ruiz is. So Parker's got to keep strong defensive fundamentals in this fight. Chin needs to go down, hands need to go up, head needs to move. If he can do those few things, which he often neglects to do in some of his fights, specifically in the lead up to this, he's really going to have an advantage over Andy Ruiz, because I believe Andy Ruiz is open. I kind of, at this stage of his career, view Andy Ruiz as a slightly more dynamic version of Chris Arreola. He's a threat if he's allowed to dictate. He's a threat if he's allowed to catch you and to impose himself. But fundamentally, if you can outmaneuver him, if you can outjab him, if you can outsmart him offensively and defensively, he's beatable. And looking at Joseph Parker, looking at his skill sets, I think he should have more than enough to win this fight against Andy Ruiz. I make Parker a very, very strong favourite. And if he uses his skill set, if he uses the attributes that he's been given, I believe Parker should win this fight against Andy Ruiz with a little bit in hand. Now, Ruiz has physically appeared to be in better shape on the lead up to this fight. There was some suggestion that he'd lost a lot of weight in the lead up to this matchup, although other people believe that's not to be the case. But he does appear, regardless of his weight, to be carrying slightly less fat than he has in previous fights. My personal opinion is that is not overly to be viewed as a positive. Whilst weight loss on the whole will be a good thing for Ruiz, when you fought your entire career at a certain weight and with a certain physical makeup, to then change a winning formula in the lead up to a big fight could potentially be detrimental. Could it affect his punch resistance? Very possibly. Could it affect his power? Very possibly. It will be intriguing to see. But one thing's clear is Andy Ruiz, he's a young guy, he's an athletic guy. Even if he's managed to whip himself up into slightly better shape, he's not going to be a fully conditioned athlete based on one training camp. The years of being overweight, the years of not looking after yourself outside of the ring, I'm afraid are going to catch up with you. And even if he's not fat on the outside, he's possibly going to be one of those guys who may remain fat on the inside in terms of his conditioning and his stamina. So, for me, the way I see this fight going is Parker coming out cautiously, establishing his boxing, keeping his distance, getting that jab working, and I think he should catch Andy Ruiz. I think Ruiz is there to be hit. Now, Ruiz is very, very dangerous in terms of his hand speed, his combinations, and his power. So Parker's going to have to be switched on early. He needs to present a moving target. Moving in terms of his footwork, moving in terms of his head movement, moving in terms of his guard, keeping it tight, keeping it live. I suspect if Parker comes out smart, if he's switched on, he can win the early rounds behind a jab. And I think that will be very, very detrimental to Ruiz over this fight, because I don't believe Ruiz is a guy who's going to come on strongly here. And I don't believe Ruiz is going to have the long-range game to compete with Joseph Parker. If Ruiz is able to get on the inside, put Parker in his back foot, Parker's in trouble, because we've actually seen him in trouble against a lesser offensive fighter in Carlos Takam. Takam is a very, very good all-rounder. He doesn't have the power, he doesn't have the hand speed of Ruiz. Ruiz may even not be as good a fighter as Takam on the whole, but he may have more of an offensive threat than Takam posed. So Parker's going to have to be very, very switched on early on. But as long as he does that, I think he can pick up the early rounds behind a jab. I think he should bank shots to Ruiz's body. I think he should frustrate Ruiz and begin the process of starting to tire and wear down Andy Ruiz. As the fight goes on, I think Ruiz will slow. I think the years of being in against lesser opponents, he certainly doesn't have the resume that Joseph Parker has. He's not fought at the same heights and against as tougher competition. The years of lesser opposition and the years of being unhealthy and poorly disciplined outside the ring will start to catch up on him. And I actually believe that Ruiz could potentially be there for the taking in the middle to the late rounds. Parker's a good finisher, he's aggressively minded, and he puts punches together very well. If that offensive threat from Ruiz starts to fade, if Ruiz becomes a bit slower on his feet, or if he becomes disheartened as the Parker jab keeps catching him, I expect Parker to raise his game a level and to put the pedal to the metal and start putting punches together. And if he does that, I don't believe that Ruiz has the experience and the defensive awareness to stay in the fight. Ruiz is supposed to have a very good chin. He's going to need a very, very good chin if this fight goes the way I expect it to. I'm picking Joseph Parker to win by mid to late round stoppage. I think he'll prove to be the superior boxer, and I think if he stays smart, he could have enough to get Ruiz out of there. Ruiz is a dangerous fight for Parker. Ruiz has offensive threats Parker hasn't been in with before. And if Parker allows Ruiz to catch him, with Ruiz's power and hand speed, Parker could get stopped here. He cannot make the same mistakes he's made on the way up. But I'm going to say Parker's learnt from those, Parker's adapted from those. And if he does do the fundamentals, the movement, the double jab, the jab to the body, the range, if he does do that, I expect that Parker should win with a little bit in hand. That's my final prediction. I'm going to cover the fight live when it comes to it. I'll be watching the fight live. It's here in the UK on Box Nation, and I'll do a video straight afterwards. So please stay tuned. Leave your comments in the section below. How do you see this fight going? Let me know if you're looking forward to it. Let me know who you think is going to win and how they're going to win. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you can check out my post-fight video. Many thanks for watching.